listening to the Startup Scale Up Show, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs to create meaningful businesses and pursue their passions. My name is Demi Samande and I am a furniture manufacturer, best known for documenting my move to Lagos, Nigeria for hopes of business opportunities. And I'm sitting down with entrepreneurs from across the continent to talk about their process, the lessons they have learned, and how to make real impact. Welcome to Susu. My guests today are Chukuka Chukuma and Osaretin Guobadia. Chukuka is an upcoming film producer with a successful background in investment banking. Having abandoned dreams of being the first James Bond, he now focuses on stories that capture our shared human experience. Osaretin is an inspiring farmer with a streak of leading transformational projects. When he is not recommending or implementing solutions for clients, he is either lost in a gallery or gazing through a window with pen in hand, daydreaming about being an author. Osaretin and Chukuka, I'm so glad to have you guys. Welcome to Susu Podcast.
Hello.
Chukuka, how are you doing?
Ladies first now, go ahead.
I said, how are you doing now? Because where you are in the world is not the way you were the last time I spoke to you. So where are you and how are you doing?
I'm at a location that cannot be disclosed, but...
Undisclosed location. but we're tracking him down.
We're tracking him, okay.
And they tell me they're very close.
All right, fantastic. Today we are talking about this book.
Ooh.
We are talking about... In Pursuit, the book that I've been looking for some time. It took me a while to get it, didn't it?
Yes, right.
I had to stress Osaretin a few times, and I go, "Where's my copy? It has to be signed. Make sure it is signed." And guess what? It was.
Yeah.
And I got 2 signatures
I'm
too.
glad you finally got it.
That's a collector's book right there, that version.
Fantastic, guys. Now, I really want us to just delve into this book because I've been excited about not just reading the book myself, but actually sharing it with our audience in Susu Podcast because I found it incredibly helpful. Guys, if you guys don't know about this book right here, I will definitely say you need to go out and you need to basically purchase a copy for yourselves after you've watched this episode. Literally, as soon as you're watching this episode, just be going online and be looking for the book and just buy. Because as somebody who's interested in business in Africa, somebody who wants to pursue a career in business within African space, if you're in the diaspora at the moment, this is definitely a book for you to have on your shelf. Amidst all the other books you might be reading, I don't think anything really paints a picture of Africa and our story in the business context as much as In Pursuit for me right now. So we're going to delve right into it. And you guys are going to kind of just talk me through it. You can see my book has been used, or it's not.
No, that's how you read a book. This is the how-to.
I was digesting and I was dissecting and I was breaking things down and I was really trying to understand not just your journey, but the parallels in your book that I can really relate to as an entrepreneur within this space myself. And boy, did I find it. So before we even go into the book, I just want to thank you guys for writing this and just being incredibly honest, but still staying within the realms of integrity. It's packed with integrity. And you guys, once you've purchased your own copy, I'm sure you're going to find that to be the case as well. But as I was reading, and let me just go into my little post-it notes here. I was writing, and I know some authors are offended by this. I write in my books.
I love it.
I write my thoughts in my books. I underline with my little pens. Yes, yeah. I keep my little post. Yes, so. Really, for me, there was a lot of sentences in here that kind of just popped out at me, and I always kind of go in there and I underline this. But I'm going to read some excerpts from the book, and you just share with me your sort of thoughts behind it and the rationale in which you had. I love the way you guys did that, by the way, where you've kind of you say these little sentences, and you sort of annotate who's actually saying it.
Yeah. It's a conversation.
It's a conversation. It's fantastic. So Chukuka says, insanely in love with Nigeria. I missed eating plantain without frying it myself. You know, plantain on demand.
Absolutely.
POD, baby.
POD. We are members of the POD club.
The PAD club. And I would love to be a member of that club.
You
But
can sign up. He's the president.
sign me right up. So one of the things that I wrote when I first read the opening, it wasn't even, I think it was, I started writing, I started making notes really at the introduction. That's when I started making notes.
Yeah.
Chukuka said, I think this is actually Oz is speaking.
Yeah.
You said, our journeys, all but trodden differently, are both founded on our belief systems and passion for Nigeria.
Yeah.
We both tell the story of the returnee's journey to entrepreneurship, which can be a fish out of water story. But the water is always there as you adapt to what Nigeria throws your way. Hey, returnees, you are not alone. Oh, I got shivers just at the introduction stage, and I immediately started writing down. And the very first question that really came to my mind was, even for me, when I was sort of contemplating the idea of moving to Nigeria, there was something about England, which where I was sort of raised, that I never felt quite at home. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I used to tell people it's too cold. I need to be somewhere warm. I can't take the cold, but I just never felt settled. Yeah. So when I read that paragraph in an introduction, my mind was like, that's what it was.
Exactly.
That's the feeling I was getting.
Exactly.
So when I read you guys writing, I was like, oh, they felt that too. Yeah. So probably just unpack that for me and tell me what it is about that core home. The
POD is
the POD club. Was that derived from the hunger to just come home? Kind of just unpack that stage of your process in your life for me.
When you land in Nigeria, you realize that you are finally home.
Yes.
Right? This is just, the place engages you in a way no other place engages you. And you're like, wait a minute. So it's almost like everything else that you use to think why you're not comfortable where you are, they seem like excuses, but they're just little things that just keeps you off edge. Right? Like, for instance, I have a scar. I fell because of black ice. I'm like, I'm going to Nigeria. I think I booked a ticket that very day.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to Nigeria. It's dead of winter in New York. I'm going to go visit. And that was it. I spent some time here. You keep coming back, and you realize that, this is home. I'll let Chuka talk about POD.
Obviously, living in a place like New York, I mean, you're spoiled for African stores and Chinese stores and stuff. But, back in the 90s, there were not as many African stores as they are now, right? And so when I needed to make plantains, when I was missing home, I thought immediately of having plantain and corned beef stew with some egg or something. The problem in America, you have to get off your butt, wear all your clothes, go in the cold, finally get to the store, and pray on your way that the Chinese man has gotten his order from Dominican Republic or Jamaica. A lot of times you get there as a West African, you like ripe plantain. But because so many West Indians were the ones getting the plantain, they're all green. So you have to buy it, and you have to wait 4 days for it to be ripe. Now, the difference between that life and the POD life is that when I'm in Nigeria, all I have to do is put up my hand and say, I want plantain. And within 5 minutes, it will show up in front of me. Perfectly.
Sure, guys. It's not even just put up your hand, it's even thinking about it. You just think plantain, and somehow you get home and Dodo is
is that plantain?
Yes.
Right? Somebody else on the make it. And that's what plantain on demand is, right? Literally a very good reason to return to your country, right? Because now you don't have to do anything anymore.
Yeah, I think we kind of know what it was like to grow up as Chukuka. It sounds to me that you were incredibly spoilt. Ajebota. Ajebora. Plantain on demand.
Incredibly loved.
Yeah.
And because blessed, people just wanted to help me and assist me.
Yes.
With fault. Plantain alone. Nothing else, just plantain.
But you love plantain when they actually fry you banana.
Oh, really?
Yes, happened. Then know you're a real plantain. If you don't have that, then you are not.
What is it? Just fried banana?
The people who do it fried banana, but frying banana in Nigeria as a replacement for plantain because they couldn't find plantain is
interesting.
It's the next level.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's like a badge.
So, right, when you guys now decide, no, I was reading quite a lot of passages in the book where you guys sort of came back in different stages. Chukuka, you came back first at a time where coming back to Nigeria was not even popular.
He was mad.
Before phones were popular, and phones were not mainstream, nobody had phones.
He came back to Nigeria before mobile phones.
So
That's what
basically,
he did.
only 400,000 people in the population of about 120 million had phones when I came back. I came back before.
What year was that?
Before many things, before the palms and all the plethora of, sort of urban markets that we have today, that, American style malls. When I came back, it was not only it was more advisable not to come back. That used to say, do not come back. That's when I came back.
What year was this, Chukuka?
In 2000. So I had come in 99 and just had a blast. And I was thinking of my life in New York, which was very good, I must admit. I mean, it was a great life working on Wall Street. But honestly speaking, the plantain on demand, the bender, pineapples that I was eating, and just wanting to be closer to my mom, who was getting older. You sitting in the diaspora, before you know, they phoned you that your parent has passed, and then you now go home and cry. I didn't want to be that child, right? So I just wanted to come home and be with my people and eat my plantain on demand and, my pineapples, and just add value, because I thought I had a skill set, right, that I could bring that was a bit rare in investment banking at the time. So I also wanted to do quite a lot of good with that skill set.
Interesting. And what about you, Oswald? As in terms of when you were sort of contemplating that move back, obviously the black ice would have been a very traumatic experience.
It was a big one.
But in terms of when you actually did now say, okay, I'm going home.
Yeah.
What would you say was that ultimate drawback for you?
So I'll start by saying Chuka is crazy, right? He moved back to Nigeria before mobile phones. On my way here, I was using Google to find, this neighborhood, you can't really figure out the streets. And I'm thinking, this is such an amazing thing that we can use technology to, find our way. He moved back here before we had phones. I just want that to settle in, to just realize how insane my co-author is.
She's quite drastic.
He's just not right. But back to me, of course, right? There's something very significant about the year 1999. And I think if anybody ever takes the time to study it, they would see that was the year where there was a new spur of interest in Nigeria from young people. Mm-hmm. So there was a group of people in New York at the time.
In Africa.
I forget. In Africa, yes.
In Africa, okay.
They were all excited about coming home. I actually came back in 97 to visit right after university. And then I came back in 1999. I was just like, I'm moving back, So I went back to America, set a plan together, a number of things I wanted to do there before I did. And literally the very minute the last one of those things happened, I was on a plane.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. So you're literally just dreaming about your return for a very long time. Yeah. It's, for me, it was a little bit different because I didn't have any memory of Nigeria. So I had to come and do a whole feasibility study. And obviously this is post phones and technology, and Google was already up and set. But for me, when I came, I equally fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the dysfunction to a degree. I saw opportunity in it. And the weather just smiled on me, and I was just like, this is the climate I belong in. I like the heat.
So natural.
This is good. In the UK, whenever it was cold, I used to find that I would just hibernate. I would just disappear. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't create. I was just always. I saw it as a punishment, to be honest with you, because it wasn't the climate that my body really wanted. So coming here was just like, I can breathe a little bit. Sometimes it's very chaotic. But I think the fact that I can, in fact, breathe allows me to be able to face
any of the issues,
a lot of the chaos that happens. And we're going to delve into that chaos a little bit. On your return, Osaretin, you talked about an incident that happened in an office where you pretty much, you locked yourself in an engine room. What was it? You locked yourself in an engine room, and the staff were like, what's going on? Now, throughout that passage, you kind of was talking a lot about just the dynamics of how things were when you guys came back. I know that Chukuka, you mentioned that obviously you guys had fantastic jobs you were in New York. I'm not sure where you were. Also New York. You had the glass offices. You probably treated well, making lots of money. You guys were sitting pretty. It's not as if you were suffering in New York. You were in very, very good positions, making very, very good money and interacting with the who's who in finance and, and business and things like that. So to come back, I imagine you took a pay cut.
Yes.
A significant pay cut. But also for me, what I really want to know is the dynamics of the people you were now working with. As much as you took a pay cut, I knew you didn't come here to earn 50K. You didn't come to earn 100K. But just talk to me about the dynamics of what that experience of you locking yourself in the engine room was about. How people took to you or didn't take to you. Just for people who are contemplating coming back, but what type of dynamic should they really be expecting when you do return home and you now have to deal with Nigerians?
So I think time has moved on to some extent, right? And I'll try to answer this question from this perspective. So moving from Nigeria to America as a child, right? There was no understanding of who you were. So that's when you used to get the jokes about the African booty scratcher and all sorts of jokes that, Eddie Murphy even made them real popular, right? Yeah. All these jokes about Africans, right? You live in a hut, you live in a tree. I'm like, tree, huts, we have cars, Yeah. So you had to adapt, right? So this is what's interesting about the growth, right? Some of your experiences from this point helps you down the road somewhere again, right? So there was that adaptation to the American lifestyle. So now moving to Nigeria, guess what? It's the same thing again. You've now come and you're now this different version of what is normal, right? You're Nigerian, but are you really? Right?
Your expectations are different.
No, not even from you. Is how you interact or how you're perceived, right? So you have to draw this picture of these young men, I'm speaking for both of us, coming in and taking somewhat senior roles, right? In an environment that is very almost regimental on how people are advanced. So you immediately are out of place because you're this under 30-year-old and you have this
under 30 too. Wow.
Yeah, and you have this very senior position and perceived to be overpaid compared to everybody else. It creates a friction that you have to manage through. And to be successful, you have to actually manage through it to gain trust and gain participation from other people working with you. Then you also have to think from the perspective that, and Chuka mentioned a few minutes ago when he said, he has these great skills in investment banking. So some of the transactions that he may have done or done a long time ago, or some of the things I've done in technology, are still far ahead of the market that you're coming into.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you have the answers, right? Because you're like, okay, we're at stage A. In my last project, I was at stage Q. Let me start working on it. So some of that may start seeming visionary when it's quite normal. So in Nigeria, sometimes some of the things you try to do seem so...
It's groundbreaking.
It's groundbreaking, but really isn't, right?
Yeah.
And it really isn't. But, it becomes innovative, and it's really not. It's quite normal, right? So those are some of the issues. You're kind of pulling people along to where they should be and where things should be, and they are trying to understand how to receive you. Because you are Nigerian, but,
But are you?
Are you? Your emotions, your mannerisms. But I do say that sort of moved on. Right, there's almost been a category created for returnees. I mean, returnees now, please. Back in the day, returnees were either in finance or tech.
Yes.
Right now, you have returnees who are doing arts,
furniture,
curator. I mean, you have a gambit of a variety of different people moving back. So it's now different. Right, so even now when I listen to people go, there was something on online recently. A guy talking about he's been here 3 years, and he was talking about his experiences. And Chuka and I, we watched it separately, and we both talked about it later and laughing. Like, look at this. This is like Ajabota, right? This is.
It was nothing serious in comparison, right?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't serious at all.
What about you, Chukuka, in terms of how you sort of navigated that dynamic? Was it something that was a bother to you, or you kind of just glided through it like a pro? How was it?
No, it's interesting that you asked that, because when I left at 19. And so I was a bit more formed than Oz, who left at 13, and even though I sort of went straight into college, whereas he was going into, junior school, right? The experiences are different. But the thing is, when I was coming home, I didn't think I would have any cultural shifts because I left with the accent I came with. You know, I found that I would be seen as the people that are coming from somewhere, right? But I was, right, and the cultural exchange and sort of silent war that has been going on in Nigeria, other than the have and the have-nots, is definitely the diaspora and the locals, right? And there's always this thing of, everybody wants to show everybody that they're smarter, better, whatever it is, right? And so, yeah, there were many traps set for me to welcome me um, to life in Nigeria, in the workplace, on the streets. The streets, people assume that because, you're wearing a shirt and tie and don't fully speak exactly like them, that you must therefore be an Ajebota, even though you are more Ajepako than the Ajepako, the most Ajepako person there, right? And you can,
Ajepako.
Ajepako.
Wow.
He's
and
still
you
trying
can
to claim
probably
this
beat
Ajepako.
you can probably beat everybody that every tout at that
Do you know?
bus stop,
Do
but
you
you
know?
don't
You
know
know
that.
what Chuka's? You know what Chuka's thing he's trying to pull here. So Chuka is an Ejabota that can fight.
I see.
So therefore, he now believes that means he's hardened.
Yes.
But those two things are quite different,
Yeah.
right? They're quite different. Yeah, see, Ejabota that his
I
mother put in
cannot take the
karate.
food out of
Do you
the
understand?
gutter,
Because he
unlike
can
you.
afford karate. So because of that, he now is acquired skills to fight.
He's now claiming Ajepako.
Ajepako, being where there's no Pacoism
Where
in him.
Especially not in that
No,
sweater.
Don't mind him.
No.
Sweater. Look at the glasses.
Ajepako don't wear that kind of
Look
sweater.
at this. Look at the glasses. Ajay softy.
All right. So many people, I know a lot of returnees who have actually gone back.
Oh yes.
They'll come with this big dream of conquering Africa, following the African dream, and the lack of AC, the mosquitoes, the traffic, the lack of infrastructure, all the frustrating things that we deal with in Nigeria every single day, frustrates them to the point where they just say enough is enough and they leave.
Yeah.
Many people are doing that.
Yeah.
There's many conversations that I've been a part of and I've been privy to, and it's almost like, oh, you must be a fool for wanting to come to Nigeria. Why on earth would you want to come to Nigeria? Chukuka, some people are even of the opinion that you were better off coming to Nigeria back in the 90s than you are today. Because for some strange reason, a lot of people think things have definitely digressed as opposed to getting better. They're saying it's more and more difficult, put tech and advanced technology and things aside, it's actually more and more difficult for businesses to thrive today than they did many other years ago. That's their opinion. Was there any stage in your journey and your return or your process and reintroduction to Nigeria where you felt that, do you know what, this was a mistake? Why am I here?
Absolutely. There were several times. The first time was at the end of my first month, where I was just scratching my head, going, "Okay, what did I tell my boss in New York when I left?" Let me remember. I think I said, "I'm going on an African expedition, and so if it doesn't work out, I hope I can come back." And they said yes. And I had to remind myself of that escape plan because I was like a rotisserie chicken in the heat, right? And sometimes the way the heat is such a pressure cooker that it really affects your psyche, but it takes a different kind of mentality. And that's where this whole thing of breaking away for a little bit or traveling, let me just get out and just go to Cotonou or go somewhere. So I started doing that. Almost on a quarterly basis, I'll go to Cotonou, I'll go to Ghana, and then every 6 months, I'll go to the States, see my family because they were there, and come back. But it is living in Nigeria, working in Nigeria. If you haven't done it before and you're coming from abroad, even for those of us that grew up 19 years in Nigeria and returned by 26, it is a real shocker. I mean, it's very, very, very difficult environment. Your first encounter, just with not even SARS, just with regular yellow fever, like traffic warden, can change your life and your perspective, because they are accusing you of stuff that you didn't do just to get money. You are coming from the abroad where everything is straight, and so you're trying to be on the book. Meanwhile, the guys are just joking with you, even though they've got the wicked serious face. So the ability to read people, the ability to not take, you give a carpenter work to do, you say, can you fix this chair? Yes. And he makes the chair worse. He wants to collect the full money that you promised, and he's asking you to manage it. All those things mess with people that are coming from a place where there isn't anything like manage it, right? You do the job and you get paid, right? So I think that for a lot of people, they just struggle, right? But for me in particular, there were countless, times where I thought, I don't know whether I can make it, but you persevere. You kind of, dig into your inner Ajepaco self and keep moving.
It's a campaign.
I think it's fantastic because I think that ability to endure, and I don't really like the word endure, but I think it's also it's character building.
But it also prevents progress to some extent.
It does. You don't want to endure the things that you can ultimately change.
Exactly.
But the things to know that you must endure the process. The process of what you're trying to achieve is where the endurance has to come. So, for instance, that carpenter that wants to collect the full money for a job not well done, I would keep telling him no, from here to kingdom come. But some people will get tired of saying no.
And just pay just to get rid of it.
There's two types of people. The person who will pay just to send them away. Then there's the person who would just say, I'm not dealing with this, and just run away and go elsewhere and leave the country and go back to England or America, wherever it is that they've come from. And then there's the person who is enduring that process and is going to keep saying no until the carpenter gets it. Yeah. You can't try it with this madam or this sir. He's just not going to tolerate it. So it's either I do the job for them or I just don't. Yeah. That's where the endurance has to come in. You have to endure the process of trying to get the job done, and that's very tough. I don't take that for granted whatsoever. But I just wish that more people gave themselves the opportunity to get past the discomfort. That's my only wish for a lot of people who do come and then decide to go back.
But I would say that I've got to a point where I don't feel that you can wish that on anybody.
That's true.
Because what's interesting about the endurance and perseverance of what Nigeria throws at you is that it's not like you get to graduate. There's no end to it. Yes. You don't graduate. You can solve all the problems you have in your house with all sorts of dual backup systems and so forth and so on. And you go to a trip for 2 weeks and you come back and everything is broken, including your backup systems. So it
can be frustrating.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. And then I want to address something you said earlier about, is it more difficult to start a business now or do things now in Nigeria than it was? But that's clearly not true, right? I think it becomes a case of the person's capacity. Some people have moved back home and done very amazing things, and we know them. Some people have moved back even recently and done very amazing things, right? I think the issue of migration, and Chukuka and I actually want to speak about this in our podcast that we just recently released. We talk about, we make the point that when the ground you're standing on no longer supports you, you move. That's the foundation for migration since, man, hunting and gathering, right? When the lake dries up, they pack up their family and move to the next place where the lake is actually flowing and plant their crops there for the season. So when you find that no matter how much you love Nigeria, it's just not working for you, you should go somewhere else where you believe it'll work for you. Life is just too short. You have to think about that. The people who came in earlier actually helped set the foundation for some of the things you see now. Yes. Right? Makes it a lot easier. Nigeria improves in such a, I almost want to say in concentric circles. It just gets a little better. Like, for instance, I applaud the fact that you can find decent bathrooms in the airport now. That wasn't the case in 2002. You almost want to build an app for where's the best bathrooms between here and my trip.
Yeah.
So these things get improved. Like Chukuka just mentioned, supermarket. You think, is that a big deal? A mall, is that a big thing? These are things that happened over the last few years. And these are things that makes it easier for you to,
To come back.
to come back.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, I'll give you an example. When we first moved to Nigeria, we were used to not carrying cash. In fact, I'm still terrible at carrying cash. Right? So you would start your weekend with not taking any cash out of the bank, from the banking hall, thinking you could just go to an ATM. Weekend starts, all the ATMs are down in Lagos. In fact, all the ATMs may be down in Nigeria.
Even till today?
Well, today is not. Is better now. Today
Yes.
the ATMs are up, but I'm speaking about 2006, right? You started your weekend. You have a family of 3, and you have no cash, right? Because there's no way to get cash. The banks are closed. So those type of things don't happen today, right? So imagine having to add that to the list of things you were dealing with. So it's a case where, as time goes on, things get better. As time goes on, people come in and solve problems. I think Nigeria still manages to present a number of fundamental problems that, either you endure,
Yes.
or you find a solution for it, or you relocate, because your business model or your personal life model is just not adaptive to the environment. Because, for any business to succeed, you have to ultimately understand your environment, right? And you have to actually have a plan for your environment. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed, regardless of how brilliant you are.
I think that for me as well is I find there's a combination sometimes of people expecting it to be easy. There's a degree of that. I think, to be honest, I call it just this need to do everything in a haste and want to have everything overnight. And once it's not working out that way, it's almost like, oh, I give up. Yeah. And it's the same thing everywhere in the world, really. I don't really think there's a place where any country is exempt from that type of attitude. I think it's just the world is getting faster by the day, and people don't want to have to go through the process of enduring what it is to actually build a company and build a business. They want it very quickly. And the moment where it's not working out speedily enough, they just want to throw in the towel. I think what you're describing sounds to me like a level of maturity where you've done your feasibility studies and it's not feasible here. It's just as simple as that. Your business model doesn't work here. So you get up and you go where it does. Or you have a family dynamic or a personal thing that you want to achieve. And this is just not the environment, whether it's on a personal level where you're just not gelling with the culture. You don't necessarily understand.
Or the time's not right for your idea.
Or the time is just not right for your idea. I think that's a level of maturity that an individual has to be discerning about to make that type of decision. I think sometimes it's just when you see it, it's just a throw in the towel because it's not easy.
So in some situations, in some countries, in some environments, some of the ground is built for you already.
Yeah.
So you just have to add little bits. It tends to be in this environment, you may have to do all of it, right? To get your idea going. So that's really now an added burden to the idea that's maybe quite basic. You just want to do cupcakes. But guess what?
Well, this is it. This is why the book is so very important, because those expectations need to be managed.
Exactly.
You need to be aware of what you're actually coming into.
Yep.
It's very, very disheartening when you come with all these expectations. You come with a big dream and big ideas, and then you get here and you realize that there's nothing to support those dreams and ideas.
Exactly.
So you get bogged down very easily and very quickly with trying to build the ground under yourself rather than just facing the business of the business.
Exactly.
And I think that's where the frustration really comes from a lot of the time. But even with that said, when you're having to build the ground yourself, would you still say it's worth it?
So it's one of those things where where you can clearly state how it's grown you, right? You could clearly speak to the experience and the freedom and the overall exposure that it's offered you, right? But I think the problem is when you have options, right? So having options can actually derail your ability to endure. So that's why people give up. So imagine trying to build this business and things keep getting thrown at your way, and then ding ding, some recruiter from London calls you and tells you there's a job for you in the city, making 10 more than you made before you left. It gets difficult, right? So those are parts of the problem. So when you have options, so I've had people tell me that I literally try to take all my options off the table, Like if having this opportunity gives me options, I don't want it because I'm really, really dogged about my idea.
Yeah.
That's when the insanity is real. So I would say from my experience, that's one thing about the book, is really about everybody's story, right? And that's why you have two people with different experiences and their lives kind of cross each other, but still remain two different stories, telling the stories of the returnee African starting a business in their homeland, right? So everybody's story is different because everybody's idea of success is also different, right? So I can say to you now, I'm living my idea of success. I think I'm on the path to where I believe I'll be happy when I look back when I get older and go, hey, that was the right path I took. I don't have too many regrets. But it's always human nature to look at what was the other path you could have taken, right? Like you mentioned, Chukuka and I had great jobs. Where would we be now, right?
Yeah.
So it's just human nature to look that way. So I would say, yes, I'm quite happy, but I wouldn't say it's for everybody. So once again, to your point, this is why we wrote the book, right? To let people know that it's actually a journey, right? It's a journey. And of course, as you go further into the chapters, you start seeing how the book applies to different stages of the journey and how it applies to you, where you're at in your journey for you to reflect against.
Well, seeing yourself in the pages is really, really powerful, I find. So for somebody who does have the appetite for entrepreneurship, and not just entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship in Africa, you should be able to sort of identify it or even see a glimpse of what to actually expect at every stage, so that you're a little bit more prepared.
Tells you you're not alone.
Precisely. Now, so I'm going to read another line by Osaretin. It said, one definition of an entrepreneur is a person who relentlessly pursues ideas or opportunities without regard to resources currently at his disposal. And I wrote, the madness for me is most applied when I make cash-sensitive decisions without having any cash. I look at myself and I say, Demi, are you all right? That for me, I feel like that's my everyday story in entrepreneurship. Not just in Nigeria, but more so in Nigeria than anywhere else, because I don't have the support behind me. I'm, like you're saying, I'm so busy building the ground up, and I'm still having to try and innovate and still create and still do the business of the day. But you don't have the structures, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the resources, you don't have the help. So it's one of those moments that you realize that you are actually a little bit crazy. You are insane.
Yes.
When I make the mistake of having a lot of conversations with friends and family members who are not entrepreneurs, and say, how you doing? How you really doing? What's really going on with you, Demi? And I say, you know what? It's really tough out here, man. So this is happening, that's happening. I'm having to do this. I'm trying to take care of that, and I have no money. And they're like, but you just hired a bunch of people. But you just done this, but you just done that. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it because somehow I have this resolve that somehow my needs are going to be met at my point of need.
Yes.
And I'm doing these things I don't want to say the word blindly. I'm doing it in
faith.
Radical faith.
Yes, that's what it is.
It's radical faith. And when I say to people, like, entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I can't emphasize that enough. And when I say it's like, I usually get the eyebrow like, what? Just business, love. No,
it's not.
It's not just business, because you are fighting left, right, and center. So many things are thrown at you, but somehow in all of the madness, you have to still birth what it is that is inside you, and that takes a lot of madness.
Yeah, it's insanity. I mean, it's
crazy. So can I just talk to me about your moments of madness? And now there were several in between the chapters, but can I just talk to our viewers and people listening today, the moments of madness that you had in your entrepreneurial journey, and how you've kind of dealt with them?
So I found myself very recently trying to explain entrepreneurship to a colleague of mine, right? And I tried to break down the differences between what an entrepreneur is and what an entrepreneur isn't, right? Being an entrepreneur is really about risk management. It's not about ideas, right? And Chukuka can talk about entrepreneur versus entrepreneurs, right? But even amongst people who think they're entrepreneurs. So, for instance, I cut right to the chase. I said to the guy, I said, look, if you start a startup and get funded like day 2, your risk has been reduced, right? So you're now about building the business in this structure, right? There's this finance structure. It's quite similar to if you have a job and you have a great idea within the job. I know how to sell this beer better. Or really how? Here's the idea. And then you go off and do it within this structure of having employment, right? So being an entrepreneur is not really about brilliance. It's not about ability to execute, as we all think. It's really about how can you stand risk, right? Because you really sit on the frying pan, and the heat just keeps getting hotter, right?
Like right now, it's boiling in here,
it's
guys.
boiling in here, but we're making it look cool.
We persist, yes.
You know, so we persist on. So that's what it's really about. It's really about, the ability to continue to execute as things get difficult, right? And the ability to work in faith. So we spoke a few seconds ago about you're creating the floor which you walk on. So every time you do something, you're really taking a step. There's no ground there. But you're having faith that when you put your feet down, the ground will be there. So that's what happens in every decision. And there are tons of them. My organization has over 30, 40 people now. We haven't fired anybody. It's COVID. But we're still paying for 30, 40 people. And you're walking in faith, believing that the next business is gonna come up, and you're gonna be able to sustain it. So there's a lot of things you do where you're just doing it by faith. You're doing it by some of it is calculated risk. Obviously, there's a lot of it's calculated risk, but almost all of it makes you seem insane because the question of why am I doing this?
Do you ever question your decisions, and how frequently are you questioning them?
All the time.
Wow.
So like
even till now?
Till now, and I've been doing this 15 years. You asked a question earlier where you asked Chuka about when was the first time he questioned moving back to Nigeria. Mine was like the very first day, where I was like, why am I here?
Yeah.
What am I doing here? And you want to build a business in that environment where things are somewhat unstable. It is insanity, right? But the thing is that it's doable, right? So if you look now, you see some people are doing fantastic, phenomenally well, right? They are creating value in this environment. And one thing, we actually mentioned this in the book, it's you always find what you need when you're chasing value, right? In that desire, like for instance, you just gave an example. You're still hiring people. You're still pushing down this thing, and you're in faith, knowing that you're going to be met at your point of need. And this is how the world system works, right? When you keep pushing towards that direction, it falls in place. And sometimes it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And let's talk about that a little bit, because that is the point where a lot of people throw in that towel. When you are almost... I'm going to say it how I feel, because I want to try and keep it real for you guys. This thing can be very emotional.
Yep.
When things don't go right, I describe it as a heartbreak.
It is.
It feels like a heartbreak. Sometimes it almost feels like some man has come along and just broken my heart.
Chuka, what do you call the relationship in Nigeria again?
What? It's an abusive relationship now.
There you go.
It's so true. It's toxic.
Yeah.
It can be so toxic.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's just, I feel like in those moments, I have to personally myself, I have to increase my self-talk and I have to be more intentional about the voices of doubt that starts to play into it every time things go wrong. And then not allowing that to cripple my ability to make decisions moving forward.
Yeah.
Because I think that can be the hardest thing. You make a decision, it goes terribly wrong, and you want to kind of scurry into your little shell, and you're afraid to make bold decisions again because of fear of you just don't know how to make wise decisions.
But ultimately what happens when these things happen is that it tries to put you in your back, right? So in entrepreneurship...
Like the man who breaks your heart.
Exactly. It wants you to just go in bed, with a tub of ice cream and
just cry yourself
to sleep. And interestingly enough, that's not the path to the solution for the problem you're currently, experiencing, right? What you actually need in that moment is to really take stronger steps forward, right? Actually take bolder steps forward, and that's will bring you closer to resolution, right? It's and all these experiences, and you said it earlier, all these experiences actually building you up for something else. Because what tends to happen is that the issues become somewhat repeated. They only seem bigger, but you're prepared for them. It's like the same thing. Your skills to be able to pick out what's really the issue becomes way you
have that ability to now be more discerning about those decisions and the rationale between them. So it's not so blown out of proportion. I have noticed that. Yeah. I have noticed that. So practice really does make perfect.
In this case, yes, it does.
All right. So you often hear that doing business in Nigeria is a constant battle. You said in one of the chapters that you must learn to dance in the rain rather than just sitting waiting for the storm to pass. Mm-hmm. Tell us, what does dancing in the rain look like to you on a day-to-day basis? What are you guys doing?
He's like, Chuka, can you dance? Wait, can you dance? See, I knew that was coming. You cannot dance. That's the problem.
Chuka, what's your dancing skills like? Come on.
Former professional dancer.
Yes, in Atlanta.
I mean, if you just look at the cover of the book, it sort of depicts that somewhat. Because like basketball, people are trying to blow you, right? But dancing in the rain talks to, if you think of things like your accounts payable versus accounts receivable, just being able to manage creditors and debtors at the same time. You're going pitch for something, but you don't know how long it's going to be. Let's say your business is furniture, and let's say a component of that business includes things that you have to get from abroad, right? You don't know what going to happen to the goods when they get to the border. Assuming you're bringing it from, say, Cotonou, or if you're shipping it into the country, you don't know what's going to happen at Tinkan Island, right? Whether the boys are going to just sit on your container, right? So the ability is where highly complex, lots of moving parts. Every day, every Nigerian that is worth their salt is checking the exchange rate, right? That's not a normal thing to be doing. But the reason why we do that is because it moves more than crypto does, right? Naira moves, the volatility of Naira is so much that you have to check the FX rate multiple times in one day just to even know where to, put it on the invoice, right?
Yeah.
And then if that invoice is thread, then some statistical challenges, right? Because now you got to figure out which forward rate to use to make sure you don't book an FX loss even before you start, right? So as the rain is the challenges of business, and the dancing is your ability to have rhythmic flow that makes it look like all is well, and believing that all will actually be well, right? Sort of wishing a better destiny than you want. So that's how I sort of explain it.
Interesting. But so your dancing moves are not fantastic?
No, they're not.
My dancing is good. It's also that has challenges, but we pray to get better. Maybe by
he's doing the robotics.
Next year.
He's doing robotics though.
That's clearly Chuka. He's older.
He does the robotics.
Yeah, he does the robotics.
But fantastic. I think you're absolutely right. I think that illustration at the front is very, very powerful, because a lot of the time it does actually feel like that's what it's like. Yeah. So what I got from this really was doing business in Nigeria is about being malleable. You need to be able to be so flexible, super bendy.
You know what's really interesting about that cover?
Yep.
We went through a creative process to create that cover.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask me to do something creative like this, I internally will start with some kind of briefing notes, like what am I trying to achieve?
Yes.
Right. This cover didn't quite go through that process. It was sort of like we told the guy, do this, and he came back with various types and said, oh, this is interesting. And it was kind of an iterative process, like, oh, no, okay, make it do this and make it do that. And we ended up here and go, I like that.
Yes.
But I don't think Chuka and I ever understood what we liked about it. So we're sitting on a podcast one day, and somebody proceeded to start explaining the cover of the book to us. And we were like, oh, my God.
Yes.
That's what's happening here. You're getting punched in the face. And what's the most interesting part about this is what the person really showed us that we didn't, that we didn't really get was look at the head. When somebody punches you in the neck, you go backwards, not forward.
Interesting.
Right?
It's defiant.
Yes, it's defiant. So that little part there, that was never intended, but you can tell there's the spirit of the book and the spirit of what we're trying to portray without even putting our fingers on it. Somebody else told us, like, wait a minute. Somebody was like interviewing us, like, yeah, it's quite interesting how you guys made the guy be very defiant and he's getting punched, but he's leaning forward. And Chuk and I were reaching for the book, like, leaning what?
Leaning forward.
Oh, wow, he's leaning forward.
Very interesting. Good job, because you did well not to get arrested.
Yeah.
Yes. You did well not to get arrested, and the book is out, alive and thriving. So well done. But I do want us to talk a little bit, let's unpack 300 pages a little bit. There's many of us in the entrepreneurial space who are always looking for prototypes of what it is that we want to achieve, right? We're always trying to see a reflection of who we want to be so that we can emulate them, so that they can give us answers to questions that are constantly burning at us, so that we don't have to waste so much time. We are, after all, the generation of quick, now, ready, let's go. So when we're talking about 300 pages, kind of explain to me what you meant about 300 pages and how we can best understand some of its pitfalls and avoid it entirely.
Okay. No, great question. So let's first start off, what it is, right? First of all, 300 missing pages is a term that Oz and I coined. So we own that term. And we came up with this thing, I want to say almost 12 years ago. We basically would find ourselves in a nice party in Ikoyi somewhere. The owner of the house wearing his alligator shoes and red socks, and would find maybe 4 or 5 ghosts, the cars, Rolls Royces parked in the house, and we're scratching our head going, but who is this guy? Like, what business is he in? Like, and the point is, if this guy wrote a book, or this person, this depiction of a character wrote a book today, and that book had 500 pages, well, there will be at least 300 pages missing, right? Because, when you look at the business that they say they do, oil and gas, you're spending money that seems like you're in exploration and you're suddenly exploring more than mobile. Meanwhile, you have 2 tankers that sell diesel. There's something missing, right? And it's a lot of pages that are missing. So that's the concept of 300 missing pages. To contradict that, obviously, is where you were going, which is the North Star. We're all looking for North Stars, which is 2 chapters later, where, that then talks about real people that have done, good and trying to emulate those types of people. But with 300 missing pages, very, very important because of social media. We saw, I don't want to mention any names, but we've seen what a lot of the Insta famous people who were deemed to be successful, some of them have yielded not to be successful and are now sitting in American prisons, right? And so it's very important for young entrepreneurs, older entrepreneurs, people that are, looking to set up a business to really understand the signs of someone that has 300 missing pages. Because when you're raising capital, the last thing you want to do in your Series A or in your seed round is going to raise funny money from one of these people. And by the way, sometimes they're male, sometimes they're female, sometimes they're older, sometimes they're younger. So there's no, sometimes they're
there's
black,
no blueprint.
sometimes they're, yeah, exactly. It's a global phenomenon, but if you raise money from one of these people, it will affect and haunt you all the days of your life. By the time your business does well and you proceed and stuff, at some point in the future, when they, open that kimono and they want to really check to find out, who came in first and where your money came in and all that, all the little bad money that you've gotten will totally corrupt the good money. And you will never be able to list that company. Right? There's quite a few big companies in Nigeria. I will not mention any names, but you scratch your head and like, at this valuation, shouldn't they have listed in London? Shouldn't they have listed in America somewhere? They can't because of the original sin, right? And that was getting money from wrong sources at the beginning.
Yes. That is
Oh,
really,
I'm
really
sure, this is
insightful.
such a topical topic.
No,
Oh,
and
I'm
you
sure
know
you
what?
have some things
It's
to say.
very
But go
important that
ahead.
we talk about it. Chukuka, it's actually very, very important. Probably more so now than ever, because more and more of these stories are actually surfacing.
Yeah.
And especially when we're now in this whole tech environment where raising funds is the in thing right now. Let's raise capital for our business. Let's raise. And we're looking for money left, right, and center, myself included. It's very, very easy to get consumed by the
Offer.
popularity and the offer.
Yeah.
And the carrot that's been dangled in front of you, and it's very easy to kind of just turn a blind eye to the source.
Yep.
Because they have their own reputation. You're trying to ride off that reputation or that the popularity of the name or the company or whoever, that you just forget to do due diligence.
Yeah.
And in an environment where in Nigeria where information is not so readily available, it can be very easy to get caught up in all of that mess. So it's a conversation that we definitely need to have.
Yeah.
It's very, very important for people who are coming into this space and want to do business and want to do honest business. But sometimes the environment can catch you at a desperate point, and you can make mistakes that you will pay for later down the line. So thank you so much for talking about that, Chukuka, because I think it's definitely a conversation that needs to be ongoing, and people need to be more forthcoming. I know that a lot of people are falling victim to this thing, but they have not been forthcoming, and they try to kind of just sit on it and keep it under wraps. But I think it really should be something that's brought to the surface in order to prevent people falling victim to it.
Yeah. People don't tell their stories. And
they don't. They really don't. Yeah. So here we are. In one of the chapters, Osaretin, you had a little bit of a personal experience with your family. Your son, Anthony, got sick.
Mm-hmm.
And part of this entrepreneurial journey, you already touched on the fact that it's many stages of many different parts of the journey. Mm-hmm. It has its ups, its downs. And this was definitely a down, because I remember, because reading this book for me was very much an emotional roller coaster. I told you.
You cry and you laugh with us.
I cried, I laughed, I was shocked, I was perplexed, I was a bit disheartened, and then there were times where I was just like, hooray again, right? So it was definitely an emotional roller coaster. But the point where Anthony got sick and your life was completely just blown open, and that had to now be the priority. Talk us through that experience and maybe some of the things that you really learned through that part of the journey.
So, I guess no matter how aggressive you think you're pushing your idea, there's a limit, right? There's something that just takes all the pieces off the board, and you have to totally reapproach the board. I think maybe that's part of the reason why I don't judge anymore, right? It may have been, because I think what happens throughout the entire journey is that at different points you grow from it. And when you're going to use it, you do not know. But when that day comes, you're going to go, oh, that's that skill I picked up years ago. And some of these skills are skills like doing a fancy Excel sheet, and some of them are just emotional skills. Some of them are people skills, emotional intelligence and all these different type of things. And some of them are just the endurance. You know how far you can take things, and your capacity. Like we always joke, Chuka has a horrible sleep habit. I have a horrible sleep habit because we've been used to just being able to work through the night.
Yeah.
So I know now, maybe at this age, maybe not so much, but I could stay through the night and the next day be able to present because I've done it before. But this was different, right? Because in all your calculation, a kid getting sick or you getting sick is not something you think about. You don't do an Excel sheet or a model for your business and go, well, in case my child gets sick, you do school fees, right? You do, we'll go to the hospital, healthcare, pay for that. But this was way beyond that. So it was, I wouldn't say it was painful, but that wasn't the real issue. It was more so dealing with what was happening with the child and having to drop everything, right? And realizing that this is what was important, right? So we have this thing we say in the book where we say, keeping what's important always important. Your son getting sick and having to be rushed for medical treatment out of the country absolutely shuts everything down. Your brain just I'm sure there are people out there that can continue to say, "Oh, wait a minute," your brain actually just shifts. You're now
complete reset.
You're completely focused on all the skills you have.
Yeah.
Your research skills is now moved to looking for hospitals and finding the best doctor. Your money fundraising skills is now, okay, how do I buy this ticket real quick? Everything moves to the child being your new focus, and I think it's interesting that it was my child as opposed to maybe me or somebody else, because I think it's only children that are able to draw that pure sense of the world is over. I need to focus on this now.
Yeah.
I think everybody else gets a degree of it, maybe a great degree depending on, but I think kids just, it's
That's
just,
your heart, isn't it?
It's a totally different ball game, and I think that it's still difficult to talk about. I mean, we're talking about years ago now. The guy is freaking 11th grade of high school, doing excellently well.
Wonderful. I see him on your social media.
Yeah,
he's taller than you, isn't he?
No, I think that's my oldest son.
That's your oldest,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, Anthony, he's long taken away his my photographic rights of him. He doesn't like me taking pictures. That's why he really never gets posted. But he's just an amazing guy, right? And you look at him now, you go, this guy, right? You shake your head and walk away.
Yeah.
But that time, what I found is that it showed you, I think throughout the journey you get these opportunities to ask yourself that question: what am I doing, and why? And you ask yourself, is it worth it, right? And if you're, I guess this is where you start getting the difference between single and married. And if you're single, you're just really asking yourself that question. And then
it's
you're
a completely different ball game, because reading through the chapters and Anthony's story and what happened there, something in my brain almost woke up to the realization that I have been thinking of myself.
Yeah.
That's a privilege that I've been able to just be thinking of myself when it comes to healthcare and moving to Nigeria and chasing that African dream.
Yeah.
But when you put children into the equation, my mind went, you've never really thought about this, have you?
It's a whole other level.
Completely different level. So immediately after I read that, I was just like, okay, I went on Google. Yeah, so sort of going onto this Google and trying to understand that, okay, this obviously been an oversight for me. I do plan to have children. I do plan to have a family. Thinking about, okay, where am I going to raise my family? And healthcare has to be something that I have to, I should really start thinking about seriously. What's the plan for this? Because nobody knows tomorrow. And it was very unfortunate reading that you had to go through that and being almost caught off guard, especially when you're in the middle of this race.
Yeah.
It's this rather fast race, and then you have to just come to a total
Complete
stop
yeah.
and realize that, okay, this is a complete reset. This is actually what's really, really important. Yeah. That was a very, it was a moment for me reading that. It was a moment, I think I probably grew a little bit in maturity.
Yeah, I think one of the things about writing a book that I've now learned is that it presents, it requires you to be vulnerable. Right, so
and thank you for doing that.
So even now, you can tell the way I'm trying to discuss it, I really still don't have the right words to explain how that felt. Looking back now, I go, well, yeah, I grew then, but it was something else. Yeah, it's a realization because earlier on we spoke about being an entrepreneur is about risk, right? But nowhere in that calculation are you. This is not inserted. This is not an input. You're not thinking my kid is about to die and that's something I need to calculate for. It doesn't happen. Maybe there's somebody out there who has the black belt.
I don't think anybody really thinks along those lines. But I think some people do think about setting up, almost setting up funds or setting up situations or arrangements for when things go wrong. But nobody ever imagines their kid is going to fall sick and it's going to be.
It wasn't a money thing. Per se, right? So maybe you didn't set it up, but it didn't mean the money wasn't accessible. It's just the situation itself. You don't think that your kid's gonna have a rare condition that needs you to do anything exceptionally and leave your desk and leave your business, and especially when you're early on in the business, is a big point where you actually ask yourself, what exactly am I doing again?
It's a complete reset, I imagine. Yeah. A complete reset. And I know that with you as well, Chukuka, you experienced a complete reset yourself. You mentioned in the book that you had a heart attack. do you want to kind of just...
To be smiling.
Why are you smiling now? Chukuka. I was heartbroken when I read that, because I've known you guys for a while. You know, we actually met in my first 6 months in Nigeria.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And we're now 4 years later, and we're sitting down having this conversation. And all the time that I've known you guys, I was discovering layers
In the book, yeah.
of you in the book. And that was like, I felt, oh my gosh, my bones. You know, so when I was reading the chapter about you, Chukuka, and your heart attack, and I was just like, wow, he really went through that. Another reset moment. How was that? How did that pivot for you in terms of the business journey? What was that moment like for you?
Well, I'll tell you a story that's not in the book that is related to the heart attack. First of all, to know that obviously Oswald is more than a friend and became a brother, which is in the book. But part of the other thing that was interesting was, so there was a cardiologist that had to do a stent, put a stent in my heart because I had a 99% blockage in my main artery. But interestingly, there was a first-time cardiologist, a female, a lady, and then 2 male nurses. So I said to my main cardiologist, Dr. Yemi Johnson, I said, look, before we have this thing, are you guys going to be putting me under? They said, yes, you put me under when you're doing heart surgery. I said, okay, is it possible to stay awake? They're like, okay, if you want to, but it's kind of like a weird thing, you know? I was like, yeah, if I can stay awake, I'd like to stay awake because I'd like to remember this so I can write about it one day. But I said, the only thing that's really worrying me is this beautiful lady that's standing beside you. Who is she? And he's like, oh, it's her first time. She's a cardiologist. She just joined us. I said, well, you know, I'm naked under the covers. My biggest worry is that I told the nurses, I said, your job is to make sure that while he's treating my heart surgery, she doesn't take a peek under my feet. And everybody started laughing. And I'm telling the story because you asked me what was I going through. You know, when your walk with faith and God is strong, even when you are lying on what some would have called your deathbed, right? You know, you don't know whether you're going to make it through the surgery. Do they do this kind of surgery in Nigeria? You know what I mean? Like all this stuff. I was certain that we had prayed and I had seen myself beyond it, right? So in many ways, when you think about the entrepreneurial journey, it's really the same thing, right? A lot of times you're looking at some facts in front of you. FX has gone down 30%. You are inside that FX loss because you have something that you're bringing from outside or, you know, whatever. You have some kind of mismatch in terms of your receivables and your payables in terms of FX. You have people that are owing you that you haven't been able to reach. So it all looks gloomy. But in your heart to heart, you know that if I keep pushing through, like having a baby, you know, you pass certain trimesters, this child will not be aborted. This child, we will have cause for celebration, right? And it's a blind faith. There's nothing that will be around you that will tell you continue to go. But you have to believe it and take on that mantle and continue to push, you know, with reckless abandon, right? So that's not in the book, but I thought to give you that insight. That's where my mindset was. My mindset was bulletproof. I was making jokes. I was, you know, happy. I was myself. I didn't cry. I didn't change. You know, the only thing I told my wife, I said, please, anytime you're discussing with the doctors how much it is for this surgery, I must never find out because that in itself can give me another heart attack because I paid cash.
That was a good move.
That was it.
So till today, you still don't know how much the surgery cost?
No. I don't need that information because it can affect somebody.
It doesn't add value.
All right, fabulous. So just moving on. Yeah, just moving on from our health scare a little bit. Entrepreneurship, we know, and we touched a little bit on it. It's over glamorized here, right? Everybody's glamorizing it, and half the time I'm looking at I'm looking at the content that I'm seeing. I'm looking at my pockets. I'm looking at the content. I'm looking at my pockets. Like, am I doing something wrong? Why am I not able to have this excess money to just, not that I would, but it's almost like something doesn't add up. And if you're not steadfast in what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, you can easily be very derailed by the spirit of comparison can consume you to such that it almost feels like whatever you're doing is not worthwhile because you're not seeing the results that everybody else seems to be seeing. The guy whose party you went to, who had God knows how many Rolls Royces outside, what type of business is he doing that I can't seem to get a grasp over? You know, when that sort of, when you start admiring these things, and then you kind of look at your situation and you wonder, okay, is this worth it? Is it not worth it? What am I doing wrong? How do you guys manage to keep that voice at bay? How do you keep that voice silent? Because we all see it. We're constantly bombarded with this, aren't we?
So I think this is one of those you're not alone moments, right? Where you just have to say to everybody, we all have those thoughts. It's something that you've used the right word. You're bombarded by it. You're thinking, have I wasted my time?
Yeah.
Have I wasted all these years? I would say it comes back to your definition of success, right? And your definition of success, it guides you. It lets you know what you're willing to do to achieve it, right? So if your current path you believe is taking you to what you believe success is, then there's no need to deviate from it, right? If my definition of success does not include a phantom or let's not make it material things, but it just doesn't include certain things, then I don't have to do too much to get those things. But if my definition of success is open up a foundation, then maybe that's what I'm willing to do, whatever to get achieved. Or buying a piece of art that I like, that's what makes me happy, right? Or maybe how I live with my family. So it depends on where you put your priorities. Then another thing that's happened recently, and this whole journey is interesting, right? And that's what this book does. I mean, Chukuka and I laugh all the time because we used to get asked the question, why write a book now? Right? Because it's like, in our environment, people tend to write books when they're older. That's what's culturally acceptable, culturally normal.
Yes.
Here, you write a book when you're 70 for your 70th birthday or 80 for your... I think we wanted to somehow tell the story because nobody really tells that story for us to follow. We don't get a lot of that in the environment. We tend to follow other people's stories that don't really apply to us. Like Chuka always makes a joke about we don't have garages. You may want to start your business in the garage, but no, it's going to be in the gatehouse with Musa. So that in itself is a missing 300 pages, right? Because if you're looking at stories that don't apply to you, then you are on the wrong page. You're getting the wrong stories, which will mislead you. So, of recent, in this journey, I recently had an idea, which I wrote about actually in an article, something called spiritual algorithm, right? What this means is that there's certain things that you just don't get a chance to do because it's not for you, right? You're in this world, but you're not off this world, right? So, spiritual algorithm is it's almost like Netflix. You start watching Korean shows, guess what's going to happen?
It starts feeding you more.
You start feeding more Korean shows. So if you take some dirty money, guess what's going to happen? You're going to start getting some more dirty money. If you say no to a few dirty money, guess what? They're going to go,
leave him.
He doesn't like this kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of a spiritual algorithm where your decisions leads to your future opportunities. So it's quite possible that your upbringing or your sense of morals may or may not make you successful. Because you're going to turn down certain things. Yeah. And certain things are going to be offered to you just by the way you are, the way you carry yourself.
The virtue of who you are.
Who you look, what you look like.
Yes.
In this environment, things will be offered. And it's those yes or no's that actually charts your path. But ultimately knowing why you're making your own decisions helps tone down the bombardment of...
the noise.
Yeah, I'm not going to compare myself to somebody who I know stole money. There's no need. I can look at his pictures on Instagram all day and go, that's a nice hat, or he's in a lovely place. But I'll never say to myself, oh, I wish that was me. There's no need for that, because you have a sense of what your path is. So it's almost coming down to it. Knowing yourself is how you avoid this issue. Yeah.
What about you, Chukuka? What would you say to somebody who is bombarded with the noise and is allowing it to penetrate their self-esteem and their sort of trajectory a little bit?
So it's a great question. It's just that I laugh because I've never been externally driven. I first took a sip of alcohol last year at 46 years old. I still haven't smoked anything. Are you being serious?
Sorry, can I just quickly verify this before you continue, please? Is this true?
Go ahead.
It's true. I'm his bartender. Yeah,
You're just giving pineapple juice.
No, basically, Chuk and I go out. There was a period of time in every entrepreneurial journey, there are different things you have to do. So when you enter a new market, you need to learn your market. So this is what we used to tell the wives, but it was actually true. So Chuk and I were out every night, right? So I'll go to the bar, give me a Jack and Coke or whatever, and just Coke. Then I'll bring Chuka's just Coke with ice, looking like a proper drink.
Are you being serious?
Hand it to him, and Chuka holds his Coke and is bumping his... And he doesn't need alcohol. Actually, he doesn't.
Yeah,
so he's bumping his head and going, "Oh, this party's great. The drinks are lovely." And there's no alcohol.
There's no alcohol. So really, it's true. It's just pineapple juice. Because I got pineapple juice a lot in the book. So it's strictly pineapple juice?
Man, pineapple juice is like my own champagne. So when people talk about, oh, I'm drinking Cristal or Rosé, I'm like, okay, so that's the Malaysian, chilled pineapple juice, or that's the Thai one, that's the Bendel one, that's the one from Cotonou, that 365. That's where I live, right? I don't need anything. Most people are trying to get to where I live, right? I live in a high, and you're trying to get to where I am. So I appreciate that I need to buy a few drinks for you to join me. But I never was externally driven. I could give a rat's ass about what other people thought. Always. It was always me. I had my own idea of what fashion was. I don't wear labels. I've never worn labels. I tend to prefer my sister making me a T-shirt, because I know it's only me that has it, right? So I sit on the other side of the moon in terms of these sorts of things. And so I have a very strong mind, and that mind tells me, like us, that you gotta define your own stuff. Bother you. You should have the same amount of swag carrying, what is this, iPhone 7? Yeah, I still have it. I'm waiting for the iPhone 15 before I change my phone, because there's nothing wrong with the phone, right? But you should have the same amount of swag with no wristwatch as you would if you had all the trappings of wealth and everything.
Yeah.
The view that I'm looking at, right? You need a lot of money to buy it. That to me is more important than having an iPhone 12 or 13 and all these things that people run around with. So when you're building a business, you have to be laser focused, not put your head up and look and say, oh my God, Flutterwave is worth $1 billion. Who cares? Just do your thing. And if you keep doing that, at some point, you will be fine. Do you understand what I mean? Yesterday, I had my one of my sisters, my older sister, made a meal for me, and it was fantastic. And I was just thinking to myself, I don't know how much I would have paid if I had gone out to eat, at a restaurant for that quality of meal that she made, with all the love and attention to detail and all the different assortment of things that were going on. So people really have to, love themselves more and find ways to block out the noise and just focus on, building the business and not worry about whether your competitor, if you're passionate about something, even if you come into a crowded space, so many people are doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. The reason why you're killing it, and you're going to kill it even more in the furniture space, is because you love what you do. And it comes out quite clearly in the product that you have, the products that come out of the thing, your workers, how they talk about you, things like retention of customers, things like retention of staff. Those are the signs of success, right? And so it doesn't matter that IFC hasn't yet given you the $100 million, for 5% stake in the company. And you know what I mean? Like, that's coming. But unfortunately, the way the film works, the film of your life works, you can't fast forward. You just have to go through the part where, they say actor no, they die for your own film. So you have to go through the part where they catch James Bond and they tie him and, you think he's going to die, but it's your movie. Emmy will succeed, right?
Amen.
Amen to that. I receive it with all enthusiasm. Thank you for that, Chuka. And on that note, guys, what do you want people to take away from In Pursuit? What is the take home they want people? I know what my take home is. I know how much impact it's made on me, but what do you want people to really take away from reading this book?
So it's there's a number of reasons why we wrote the book, right? As you can see from the introduction, it's almost like we did the whole book right there, right? It's really important that people know that they're not alone, right? You're not alone. That it's a journey, right? And it's like the name, In Pursuit. You're on a journey. You're in pursuit of your definition of success. And of course, there are a number of lessons and stories that are told along the way to support the fundamental idea. But it's really about you knowing that it's a process, right? And getting there will either make you cry, laugh, a number of different emotions that you will experience, and a number of unexpected turns that you would encounter. So that's why we have things like you better learn to dance, right? We have things like, knowing time, like, okay, you're only in year 2. It could take 14 years, right? So, this thing you have entered, it's 14 years. Maybe you may want to go do something else because it may not take 3 years, right? It may actually take 14 years. Are you willing to give that time, right? So it's really, the fundamental thing is we want people to be exposed to what they're really deciding to do. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to be an entrepreneur on our continent. Here's what's unique about our continent. Here's what's unique about being an entrepreneur here. It's all in front of you. Sort of use that as a guide or a decision-making tool.
Yes. Insight that you otherwise wouldn't have, which is fantastic. All right, so guys, Osaretin and Chukuka have actually been very generous to gift Susu Podcast 2 copies of In Pursuit, which we're actually going to gift to 2 of our lucky viewers. In order to get a copy of the book, you have to do a couple of things. You'd have to go to Osaretin's page and follow him, go to Chukuka's page, follow him, also follow Demi Samande, and on the post, just sort of write down why you think that you deserve a copy of In Pursuit. And the 2 candidates who are convincing enough in their reasons why will basically send you out a copy wherever you are in the world. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
My copy is signed. Can we get 2 signed copies for our viewers as well?
It's quite possible.
Quite possible. Yes, we can probably arrange that. But guys, thank you once again. I'm the benefactor of this gift, and I'm very, very, very grateful for it. Chukuka holding up his copy.
Let me join.
Everybody in Africa has to have a copy of this because it's powerful, it's insightful, and most importantly, it's ours.
Yes, it is.
It's ours.
Yes.
Meaning it's our story, it's our journey, it's
right.
our pursuit, and nobody can tell us how to pursue success in our continent better than ourselves. So let's start building authors like this up. I'm looking forward to the second book.
Oh, it's coming.
It's coming, yeah. Super, super excited. I hope you guys have thoroughly enjoyed today's session, because I certainly have. I am fueled to keep going in my own personal pursuit. Business in Africa is not easy. The struggle is indeed real, with a double R. You have to fight each and every day. You will lose sometimes. Failure along the way is inevitable. But integrity is a non-negotiable if we are indeed going to change Africa. I am led by 4 questions each and every day. What am I building? Who am I helping? How am I helping? And how am I growing? Thank you so much for watching today, guys. Please don't forget to share this podcast episode, and most importantly, do not forget to be extraordinary in the way that only you can be. Take care, guys. Bye.